All right, let's begin. Welcome everybody to this webinar on shoulder health. Before I hand over to Naz, the MC, and the panel, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, and like to recognise the continuing connection to the land, waters, culture, and communities. Pay respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, and extend that respect to elders past and present, and to their children and young people who are the future elders and caretakers of this great land. And warmly welcome any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders who are joining us today. Without further ado, I will hand over to our MC today, Nazim Erdem.
Thank you very much, Sal. So welcome everyone as well. Just wanted to maybe start off with introductions of the panel members. So we've got, as you can see, 5 panel members with varying degrees of disability. So we'll do a quick introduction between ourselves and then finish off with introduction from Janet. So Janet's a professional, I guess, I'm going to say. I'll let her do the introduction, but she's a physiotherapist from the Victoria Spinal Cord Service. So maybe I'll start. My name is Naz. I'm a C6 quad. I've been in chair for about 33 years, from diving into shallow water, just being silly when I was younger. And yeah, I mean, I've had shoulder issues over the years, which we'll get into a bit more detail later on. So I'll move on to Georgina. And Georgina, if you pass it on to the next person.
Hi everyone, I'm Georgina. My level of injury is T7. I've been in a chair for about 21 years and it was from a blood clot to the spinal cord. I've had recent shoulder issues this year and I'll share those a bit later on. Jack, you're next.
Yeah, I'm Jack, C4-5 complete quad for a bit over 8 years. I mostly use a power chair, bit of time in a manual chair and a rugby chair for exercise. But a few months ago, I tipped my chair over and broke my collarbone. So that'll be my experience for today. Over to Marty.
Today, I'm Martyn Ford. I am a C6-7 incomplete quad. My injury, we still don't know how it actually happened, but I was walking along and my discs exploded basically and collapsed and cut my spinal cord. So that was back in 2012, so nearly 13 years ago. I play badminton for Australia. I also play wheelchair AFL for Collingwood. So this time I've got training a bit later on, but I can't train at the moment. I've had a lot of shoulder injuries, a hell of a lot. I've just been through 2 lots of surgery. My last one was as recent as last Monday, so I've still got all the wounds to show, so we can go into detail a bit later about that. And then I'll pass on to Janet, I suppose.
Yeah, well, my name's Janet McCarthy. I'm one of the physios here for the Victorian Spinal Cord Service. I currently work in the spinal outpatients, so I see people after they've left hospital and down the track. I see quite a few of you in terms of helping out with shoulders. So it's certainly something I see a fair bit of in the work that I do.
Thanks very much, Janet. So the guys on there that are watching us, again, if you've got any questions, please raise your hand or type your questions into the field. The icons down the bottom, there's a Q&A or a chat area. We can ask your questions, and towards the end too, we'll open it up and people can actually talk and ask their questions that way if they please. I think Janet's going to kick us off with a slideshow presentation.
Oh, you want me to do that now, or do you want to introduce your stories in terms of your experiences with shoulder pain first?
Yeah, well, we can do that. So I think we touched on that a little bit. So I've been very active over the years since I've hurt myself, and I guess that's one of the things, it's like a catch-22. You try to be active, but sometimes our shoulders are our legs, so we can overuse them. I played, like I said, wheelchair rugby for many, many years, and that's worn down my shoulders, and I've come out of my chair quite a few times as well and done quite a bit of damage. And my rotator cuff, both of them are pretty bad. You know, I'm at the stage where I'm doing physiotherapy, but I'm trying to maintain it and trying to work out the best way to do it. And I'm also considering surgery as well if the outcome is going to benefit me. Of course, you know, there's a lot of steps that I've taken along the way, and I'm looking into surgery as well. But, you know, just because I'm looking into surgery doesn't mean I'm going to go ahead with it. I just got to weigh it up, you know. So, yeah, it's a catch-22. You got to manage your shoulders and by keeping, you know, active and, you know, pushing your chair or whatever. At the same time, you got to realize that you have to manage your shoulders and not let them deteriorate too much. Some people are pretty lucky; they don't have any shoulder issues at all. That's a fair bit from me. Maybe move on to Georgina, talk about some of the issues you've had over the years.
Yeah, well, it's not really over the years, Naz. It's been since February, and I've been quite lucky that my shoulders have been quite strong for quite some time, and it was a bit of a shock when one day I just did not have the strength to get my chair in the car or even just doing just the daily transfers. So I immediately went to the GP, got a script for a referral for an ultrasound and X-ray. And yeah, I just was looking at the person doing the ultrasound and X-ray, and the looks on their faces wasn't too good, and they were kind of giving me clues, but they said wait for the report. So basically, when I got the report, I'll just read it out because it's got big words. There was mild AC degeneration. There was some undersurface spurring of the acromion. There was the AC joint was tender. The subacromial bursa is thickened with bunching on abduction, consistent with impingement. So all these words, I'm thinking, what the hell is this? So here I'm Googling everything. And there's cuff tendinopathy. Then there was a partial tear of the supraspinatus. So never had anything like that before, and understandably it was causing pain. So they did recommend a steroid injection. And if that wasn't successful, then get an MRI. And I didn't want to go down that path. I wanted to, you know, do other things like putting ice on it, putting heat on it, and doing some gentle exercise. I've been to the osteopath. It's been really, really helpful. I've been going every 2 to 3 weeks and going to the hydro pool as well, doing very gentle exercises in the water. So yeah, that's been my treatment so far, and it has improved a lot since February, and I have returned to getting in and out of the car, but really, really slow on my approach, and yeah, just trying to, you know, not go crazy. When you feel good, don't think that everything's back to normal, because some days it feels really good, sometimes, you know, it goes backwards. So it's been a bit of a ride, and yeah, so that's my situation at the moment. Jack, next.
Yeah, a few months ago, I was taking 8 years of running around in my PO chair, getting more and more confident until I come out the ramp of my van one night and got a bit overconfident and done it a bit quick and ended up tipping over laying on my side. It was a pretty big wake-up call for the 5 minutes I was laying on a broken shoulder, waiting for for some help. And someone turned up, and we ended up with a bit of more help from more people, got me up and back in my bed. And then I knew I'd damaged my shoulder. Then I started worrying about what I could have broken or damaged below the level of the injury, which is pretty much armpit level. So turned into an ambulance trip to hospital, and CT scans in the middle of the night, which thankfully proved that I'd only broke my collarbone and a few other fractures, hairline fractures in the shoulder and collarbone and shoulder blade. But yeah, a night and a day in hospital. But then it was 6 weeks or 7 weeks of a lot of pain and a fair bit of grief for what could have been, if I had just taken a little bit more care, 20 seconds of extra care getting out of my car that night would have made a lot of difference. So that's sort of my lesson here is just don't get too complacent in your chair and try not to tip them over. But I healed pretty well. It did take 7 weeks. Got a good report that my collarbone had healed, and then went back to and I realised I'd lost a whole lot of strength in that time. So back to my physio, and he started me back in the gym with a bit of a program to try and build up some strength again. So 3 times a week, doing an hour-long gym session. It seems to be starting to come back. So yeah, but a good lesson of don't do it. Don't just be a little bit careful and don't break your shoulders. But yeah.
That's the thing, I mean, shoulder injuries, they can happen suddenly or long term, where they slowly you feel you lose function or you start to get pain and it's consistent and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, like before you actually fell out of the chair, Jack, if you had any shoulder issues along the way, or is there a way where you try to increase the strength of your shoulders? Like you mentioned you playing wheelchair rugby, going for pushing that as well. Was that a form of exercise or strengthening as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like I spend a lot of time in my power chair just because basically because it's easier. But up around home, it's not real good, bit hilly and that. But I spend a bit of time pushing my manual chair, get out up and down the road just for exercise and strengthen my arms and shoulders up. And it gives me a chance to I'm not super good at rugby, but I have a bit of fun and pushing the rugby chair around. It's actually great fun, best fun. But yeah, from a pretty low base, I get a fair bit out of my arms. But same thing as you say, look after them. But the gym sessions work. It's surprising just in the months since I have started back again after 8 weeks off, how quick they are actually building the strength back up. We could actually, way we go.
Yeah, excellent, very good. What about you, Georgina? I know you do. You're a very active person as well, and your shoulder injuries are just recent, so they haven't sort of been progressing along the way. But before that, were you told about maintaining your shoulders, and was that something you worked on before? Just keeping the shoulders moving, and again, because the shoulder's pretty complex, isn't it? So we use them a lot more than other people. So I don't know if you were conscious of keeping your shoulders strong and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I always had a little weight session at home with my own dumbbells and TheraBands, and I always wanted to maintain the strength for things like disassembling the chair and doing transfers. I wanted to keep strong, and I would push along the streets and to local cafes and stuff. But I think I think it's just been wear and tear over the years, slowly. And then I believe the tear that I got in my shoulder was like a overextended arm. I was stupidly putting my wheelchair in the back seat where I normally put it in the passenger side beside me. Because I had someone with me in the car, I thought I would put the chair in the back, and extending the arms that far back with one arm was a really silly thing to do. And and I know that's the area and that position, that's where it hurts the most. So I have a feeling I've done that damage there, but also it's just the general wear and tear over the years. But nonetheless, I think the exercise has been very important in terms of getting it back to condition, but you've got to know what sort of exercises to do to get the blood rushing through the area to heal. But you just got to be patient with it. Yeah, and just not be silly with different things, trying to be like the hero and be thinking that you're strong enough to do something when you're actually getting a little bit older and not as strong. But yeah, so that's what's happened with me, Naz, I think. But the exercise and the rehab and going to the osteopath, that was my choice. You could have a physiotherapist as well, which would recommend good exercises. But hydro pool, I love the pool anyway, so that's what my choice was.
Oh, excellent. How about if we go to you now, Marty? I know if you want to speak about like progression, like did you notice your shoulders getting bad at a certain point or a certain activity? And how long ago did it start before you or did you know what to do? Did you know you need to see a doctor or physio, do stretches and all that sort of stuff for prevention?
Yeah, mine started a couple of years ago, really. I think a lot of it's got to do with transferring and just everyday, because I use my manual chair a fair bit, everyday pushing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not a small bloke. I'm 2 meters and weigh, a fair bit. So that as well probably doesn't help. But in saying that, all the way along, I've had physio before every training. Like for badminton next, we use our shoulders a lot, especially my right one. We hit thousands of shuttles every day for training. But for that, it was like every day I was doing band work with weight sessions. So I've been through that whole, I suppose, thing of trying to keep and maintain my shoulder strength as much as I can all the way along. But it got to the stage around October, November last year where I've actually tore my biceps off the top of my shoulder on both arms. It got to that stage. So that's why I had to go down the surgery route. We tried the injections, been through all that, been through all the extra, physios, doctors. So for us at this stage, the surgery to repair what was actually wrong. So I had separate problems as well, had tears in those. I had rotator cuff was completely destroyed in the left shoulder. Right shoulder was pretty bad. No cartilage left in the left, not much cartilage left in the right. So this was the step really before having full shoulder replacements. So this is still as part of the maintenance phase, I suppose, trying to maintain what we got left, because my next option is really only to get full shoulder replacements. And that's the last thing I want to do, especially at my age. But that's where I'm at because they're so worn out and so deteriorated. No matter what I did, really, I've done a lot of physio and stuff like that. So, so that's where I'm at the moment. My left shoulder was done on February the 10th this year, which is good. Had a whole bicep reattachment and that, and arthroscopic for the rest of it. Last Monday, I had my right shoulder done, so I've still got the wounds to show you all. So that was, they managed to repair the bicep on the right because my hitting arm as well. We tried to do that first rather than relocate it like on the left. And we'll see how it goes. It's coming up a lot better for recovery already. I'm supposed to wear a sling most of the time, but I don't.
Not doing the right thing, Marty.
Yeah, no, but it's all right. It's really for comfort on the right. The left one, I couldn't move for 6 weeks, no matter what, because of the bicep change. The right one, I'm finding the recovery is actually quicker if I'm actually moving it more, but not overdoing it, rather than keeping it in the sling and stiffening right up. So the left one really stiffened up a lot. Having it in the sling flat stick, but I had to because of the bicep, so I didn't want to rip that off. But yeah, so that's really where I'm at today. I've probably got another, I don't know, 4 weeks off court, I suppose, before I can roll back on and start doing slight stuff.
Now you said you got training later today.
Yeah, I won't train. I just go. I'm not allowed to roll. I'm not even allowed to roll yet.
Oh,
next week, I'm allowed to roll, but I won't be allowed to do any contact for.
So you go to training to watch at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. But the sooner, like my left, once I was allowed to roll, I started rolling. I think it was like mid-March. It was coming good. I've still got some wastage in the left bicep. Naturally, is going to happen. So we've started doing light weights now on that. But yeah, I'm finding the more movement, especially when I was having issues all the way through, the more I moved, the more band work I did every day, just to get movement through. And I found ice, didn't really work for me. I found heat. Heat works better for me for recovery. So I got bad elbows as well. So I found, that's another topic for another day. But that is, yeah, but I found heat actually works better for me. So, it's each to your own to find out what actually works better. In the initial stage after surgery, ice is the way to go because of all the inflammation. But I found with maintenance for my shoulders, I found heat packs.
Okay.
Unreal. Thanks very much, Marty, for that. So, yeah, it's a thing. Janet probably knows, well, she does know a lot more than me, but I was going to say, after surgery, I heard if you do go that way, recovery takes a long time. People are talking like 6 months, and it's sometimes 12 months to get back to where you were before you had the surgery. So yours seems to be a lot quicker than that. I think it might be the type of surgery that you had.
It's interesting you say that. I think a lot of it, I spoke to the physios and that beforehand, and other athletes that have been through it. They said the fitter you were going in before surgery and stronger you were, the faster your actual recovery can be. It's not necessarily correct, but I found with my left, definitely 100%, because I was relatively fit, even though I call myself a fat fit. I found the actual recovery a lot quicker than even my surgeons gone, yeah, you're recovering faster than you probably should. But then again, you're doing the exercise, you're doing the rehab. So and it's really going to depend on the person too, where they're at, where their body's at, how much damage they've got inside. So it's really a constant variable. But yeah, I was told initially I won't be back on court 6 to 12 months at the earliest. No impact for 6 to 12 months, but she has then basically turned around and said, no, you actually can now. And she's given me all new targets. So I'll be back to competition at this stage. As long as nothing else goes wrong, I'll be back on court competing internationally within probably end of September, October.
That's incredible. So I guess, surgery is the last resort. And I guess after the surgery, you talked about shoulder replacement. People probably want to hear about that. Maybe Janet can talk about what that is. I've got no idea. Do they take, like, if my shoulder's bad, do they take Marty's shoulder off and replace it to mine? Is that what a shoulder replacement is?
I probably don't know as much about shoulder replacements.
Yeah, okay. Well, Marty probably seems like he knows a little bit, so we'll come back to that one. A few questions coming through now. You guys happy to just go through some of those questions coming through? So yeah. The first one, this might be a Janet question. Is freestyle swimming bad for your shoulder?
It really depends on whether you have the range of movement required. I think in some instances it can be a problem, and in others not. It really probably depends. It depends on a lot of things, unfortunately, on that. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to give a specific answer there. But if you haven't got the range of movement to be in the positions that freestyle requires you to be in, then yes, it's possibly not ideal. And there's perhaps better strokes to be doing instead. Freestyle is probably one of the more, if you ignore that most people probably don't do butterfly, freestyle it's a challenging stroke that you actually need a fair bit of coordination from moving and rolling in the water, and also the range of movement that you are in. I don't know whether that answers your question or not. Sorry.
Naz, I know the particular person that wrote in that message, and she actually does very slow backstroke with the assistance of somebody, and that has proven to be really, really efficient or effective for her in terms of her shoulder, and it's actually healed it very, very well for her. Very slow backstroke in the hydro pool.
Okay.
So yeah, the freestyle may not be good, but it depends, I guess, on your shoulder issue.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess if you're doing the movement, backstyle or freestyle or whatever, and it's awkward or painful, I guess that's why if your body's saying, you probably shouldn't be doing it, or change your technique or something. But I know, I'm just thinking what I can add to that. I think swimming overall, I've heard it's good for lots of reasons, but if it's causing pain and all that sort of stuff, I think you need to probably see a physio and try to work out if it's the right thing to be doing.
Naz, do you have a daily shoulder maintenance routine?
That's a question.
Yes.
I do. It's getting out of bed, doing this one hair I've got, doing the brushing strokes and all that sort of stuff. I actually don't have a specific one. It's mainly about getting active, and if you need to go slow, it's good to go slow. I noticed that over the years too. I do it subconsciously. I do a lot of stretching. I go side to side in my chair. I'll sort of stretch my arm up and just go around, and that's. Marty probably does it as well. But when you're playing wheelchair sports, it's really important to do stretching before activity, just to make sure that the shoulders within range. Even after a workout, doesn't matter what sort of workout, you need to do a stretch again. Of course, there's proper ways to do stretching, and stretching groups of muscles or different muscles as well. That's really important. So I guess, my answer to that is subconsciously I've worked out to do lots of stretching throughout the day. I find that really important. Thank you, Georgina. Thank you, whoever asked that question as well.
Colin Johansson's made a comment about his personal shoulder journey. Do you want me to read it out?
If you can, yeah.
Yes. Colin's a C6 complete for 48 years, manual chair for the whole time. He has had a bilateral tricep tendon transfers back in 83 and 84. He tore both rotator cuffs separately. Snow skiing back in the early 90s, but no surgery was required. Getting in and out of the car to drive is getting harder these days. But he has been hand cycling for 2 years, but that doesn't hurt. And he believes it is, or is it safe?
Is it safe?
Yeah, question.
I think having a level of fitness is always going to help, and I'll probably talk a little bit about that before. Probably quite possibly is more than fine. It just had, probably a case of having a look at the transfers and the other side of things and what's going on there, and just looking at things in a overall pattern of what's going on for you to know whether or not it's an issue or not. But a general level of fitness, as the others have already spoken about, having a degree of muscle, keeping up your muscle strength generally, and a level of fitness is definitely going to help in looking after. Because the fitter you are, you've just got more reserve. You've got you don't fatigue as quickly, so that you're more likely to injure yourself from a shoulder perspective if your muscles are really tired. as well. And it's usually, you know, it'll be when you're rushing. It'll be, you know, like it's the not having taken enough time or rushing through things and tired that makes you at a higher risk as well.
Thank you.
Just saw there's another question come through. I think it's a comment. Karen says, I find colder weather has an impact on my shoulders and soreness. Do you guys have that as well? Like when it's colder or hotter? Does it feel worse? Different conditions?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we should all move to Queensland.
I find when I train over in Asia and that, I actually recover on that a lot better. And it's easier to get up and get about. And because Melbourne, oh my God, winter, I try to avoid winter in Melbourne if I can. If I can get out of here, I do.
I'm sitting here shivering in an office.
Yeah.
Well, no, is that because the muscles just like to stay heated and not get cold, and the joints and all that sort of stuff? I wonder.
That's what I found. I found it a lot harder in the colder weather. Also for mine, because I get a lot of nerve pain in it as well. But on that side of things. But yeah, as I said to you before, I find heat helps me better than actual cold. So just in general. So yeah, that's just me personally.
Okay. You're nodding your head too, Georgina. You're the same?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably quite a few listening out there that have arthritis as well. I've got osteoarthritis in the hands, and I find that soon as winter starts, they hurt a lot more. So I'm forever with the heat pack. But yeah, when I've gone to Queensland, when it's been cold here in Melbourne, I just forget about my hands. They're just fine up there for some reason. It might have something to do with the weather, but yeah, I agree with Marty. I just feel better in the warmer weather.
How about you, Jack? Do you get sore in the colder weather when it's really cold?
Definitely. It takes a bit more getting going in the mornings to get your arms stretching and moving. Heavy and stiff, especially cold mornings. As you get going through the day, they get a bit better.
Because, you know, as I get older, a lot of people call me soft because I'm rugging up a lot more. Wearing a jacket and all that, they say, no, you're going soft. So I'm just going to say, no, it's for my shoulders. It's to make sure my shoulders are nice and warm. I'm not soft. Don't call me soft.
You are soft, mate. Come on.
I get it all the time. Okay. Few questions coming through, which is great. So anyone online, yeah, please go ahead, ask away.
Now, shall I perhaps head to my little slideshow? Because that might, yeah. So otherwise, I think we might run out of time.
Yeah, perfect.
Hopefully, also will help out with a little bit of some of the terms and things that were being used.
These scientists, they come up with all these weird names.
Yeah, I'm going to attempt to share, and hopefully I don't muck it up. So
you know, you've got something happening, which is good.
Something happening, and slideshow. Okay. Come on, click. Thinking about it, sorry. Okay. So I think we've already probably covered a fair bit of this in terms of why are we interested in shoulder health, because I would imagine the majority of you here today listening in on the webinar are here because they've either have experienced some shoulder pain themselves or are concerned about what effect shoulder pain might have on their ability to move and function. You might have been told you have to be careful about your shoulders, and so therefore you're wanting to know a little bit more about it. And just also knowing what of a difference, you know, having pain-free movement can have on your everyday activities when your mobility is heavily reliant on your upper limbs, and for some of you entirely reliant on your upper limbs. So I will mainly be talking about the shoulders, as Marty indicated before. It's not just shoulders, it is also elbows, wrists, hands, and everything else. But we will just be mainly talking about shoulders today. Now, there will be, as with spinal cord injury generally, there's such a wide range of abilities and effects that a spinal cord injury will have had on all of you. Some of you will have not have full strength or innervation, nerve supply to all of your shoulder and hand muscles. There'll be others of you that do have that, and others with only a small amount of movement. And there'll be those that rely on it for most or every activity, transfer or movement, and they do, or other people might be relying on it a lot through walking aids and that as well. Shoulder problems are actually very common in the general population as well, particularly as we get older. And obviously, as you've heard a little bit today, there is certainly a high proportion of people with shoulder injuries and problems in the spinal cord injury population. So what are some of the challenges? I've sort of spoken about this already a little bit. Are all the muscles in your shoulders actually working, or do they have muscle strength? Because that can make a big difference about what's happening and what you can do to change things. And are all the muscles in your legs or trunks working as well? Because that actually, believe it or not, has an impact on your shoulders as well, not just from having to use your arms to move, but for example, not having very strong trunk muscles can mean that your shoulders have experience a lot more load. So if you were to watch a professional tennis player, for example, you watch them serve, do they just serve with their arm, or do they transfer their weight and do a big movement with their legs and their arms as well? So when we use our shoulders, with the exception probably of swimming, actually we're using our whole body, and what's happening in the trunk and your legs can have an impact on how much your shoulders are able to do. Our shoulders weren't necessarily designed to be weight bearing, so that has a really big impact on the challenges that people with spinal cord injury have with their shoulders, and just the demands of using your arms for everything, and the overuse and the wear and tear that we've already sort of spoken about. So a little bit of anatomy to help us out. So hopefully this will help make a little bit more sense of some of the words in that were being bandied about before, that you might have heard before. So this is a skeleton of, or a picture of the skeleton in regard to your ribs, your shoulder blade, and your shoulder joint. So the shoulder joint is actually made up of multiple different joints. We probably all think about, when we talk about a shoulder, we probably all think about the ball and socket joint that we've got here, being the glenohumeral joint, but it's actually made up of more joints than that. If you all find your collarbone, Jack will be very familiar with his. So find sort of the middle of it. And if you trace it back towards your middle, okay, you've got a joint there where it attaches onto your breastbone. Believe it or not, that's the only place your whole arm is attached to your body through the skeleton. It's pretty freaky, really, if you think about it. Your whole arm, that's the only joint that is actually attaching to the rest of your skeleton. So that's called the sternoclavicular joint. If you come back out along your collarbone again, out to the outside there, okay, there's a little nodule there. And that's called the acromioclavicular joint, or the AC joint, which is Georgina was talking about before. Anybody who's probably a footballer in their past life and other things may or may not have strained one of those in the past as well. That then attaches around to your shoulder blade. The fancy word for shoulder blade is a scapula. So the scapula is pretty much held on with muscles and that as well. Okay, so that's some of the features there. We'll just move on to this. We'll go through to the next one. So I've got a little video here. Hopefully it works. I just thought it might be useful for you to sort of have a look without all the muscles and bones and skin, just to see what movement happens as you lift your arm up. Okay, so you can see the arm starting to come out to the side, and there's not a lot of movement at the shoulder blade at that point. As it comes up a bit more, you can see there's movement both at the front and through the shoulder blade, and as it comes up higher, there's more movement that happens at the shoulder blade. What I'd really like you to notice as that arm is coming up is that bottom tip. So if you imagine the shoulder blade is a triangle, that bottom tip of the triangle is coming around your chest wall as your arm comes up. Okay, I'm just going to rewind it a little bit because there's another little bit I want to point out. All right, just come back a little bit more there. The other thing I want you to notice is that the ball in that socket is turning out as it's coming up. So it's turning around and as it comes up. As this comes around the side a little, oh no, I need to come back a little bit again. I want you to also see the bone at the top there and the gap between that ball. Okay, so that's where some of your rotator cuff goes, and it helps move that ball out of the way of that ridge there. Okay, so that's commonly where some of our rotator cuff tendons tend to get jammed, and our rotator cuff tends to be very, very important in terms of controlling that head in the movements. Okay, and it's why strength and control and all of those type of things are so important in the shoulder. I want you to have a little bit of a think before I move on to some of the other little bits about the shoulder anatomy. Is just actually, your shoulder joint is an amazing joint. I want you to think about what's it there for really, is to be able to get your hand in such an amazing amount of positions. You think where you can get your hand in terms of reaching, in terms of all the way around. It's a very, very mobile joint. It's not a very, very stable joint when we compare it to something like the hip joint. Okay, our hip joints don't have anywhere near the ability to move our foot and leg in the amount of places that you can get your hand as well. So it is quite an amazing joint, but it is very much reliant on good movement control and muscle activity. So some of the muscles that work on that shoulder blade that I was talking about before. So shoulder blades are really, really important to your shoulder movement. So we have some muscles called, we've got one here called levator scapulae up the top, and your rhomboid muscles. Some of you will have heard those names in the past. They tend to be very, very tight in most people with shoulder problems, and particularly in wheelchair users. We've also got Mr. Trapezius over here as well. So some of these muscles help rotate your shoulder blade down, and some of them help them rotate up. Another really, really important muscle in the shoulder is something called serratus anterior, and this one helps hold your shoulder blade on your chest wall. Okay. Some of us don't have strength or power in that muscle, and that can definitely cause some problems. And some of us, we might have it, but it struggles to work properly because of the demands that you're doing with your arms. The pectoral muscles, most of you will have heard of these guys at the front. Because for those of you who are in wheelchairs and using your arms for mobility a lot, these guys, when you've got your shoulders forwards and down, they tend to get really, really tight. Okay, so they're ones that we're wanting to make sure that we've got good flexibility in. And this little guy here, Mr. Pectoralis minor, he tends to be the one that tends to tip your shoulders forwards. Okay, so it's really, really common for those guys to get tight. And they have a big impact on what's happening with your shoulder blade and your ability for your arm to go up as well. So the rotator cuff, you've probably all heard of them and some of the fancy terms and that they're called. One of the main ones that people get tears in and things like that is called supraspinatus. So that comes along the top here. So this is your shoulder blade at the back. Sorry, you probably can't see my pointer pointing here. Sorry.
Yeah, I can. So
you can. Can you see my pointer pointing? Can you see my mouse pointing or not?
I can. So hopefully everyone else.
Okay, hopefully everybody can. Excellent, because otherwise you're going to wonder what I'm talking about here. So this is the back of your shoulder blade, and this here is called the spine of scapula. You've got your supraspinatus rotator cuff muscle coming here, and it comes under that arch through there, which is one of the reasons that it tends to get the damage and the tears in it, because it's prone to getting squashed in under there of the timing, and that's not working very well. One of the other ones is called infraspinatus. This is this big one in under here. Okay, it's quite a big muscle. It's one that tends to get tight really, really easily, particularly in wheelchair users. And then you've got another little slither that sort of accompanies that one there, and that's called teres minor. Then you've got your triceps here. I'll go to the front view. On the inside of your shoulder blade, you've also got one, it's quite a big muscle actually, called subscapularis here. Also starting to see lots of people with tears in these, and it's one that helps control the front of the head here. This is the fella that Marty's mucked up. It's actually a really, really common one to have issues with, is your biceps. So your biceps meaning two, means it has two heads. You have one that just comes up to your elbow, and then one that comes all the way up into the top of your shoulder. It actually goes in almost into the shoulder joint. There's a little bit I'll talk about in a moment in terms of what that inserts into. So it's the reason that it gets a bit of a workout in wheelchair users is it's one of the ones that helps restrain the ball at the front of your shoulder joint. Same with subscapularis as well. So when you're taking your arm back, for you're pushing in your wheelchair, when you're leaning forward, lifting up and pushing, it's having to do a lot of work there at the front. So it's one of the ones that tends to get more wear and tear. You didn't used to be able to see subscapularis very well on some of the imaging, so sometimes people weren't aware they had tears of those until more recently. This is just a bird's eye view from the top. It sort of shows you how those muscles come underneath that acromion or part of your shoulder there. This is the bit that Marty broke off here. So you see this, it almost looks like a saucer, doesn't it? So this is looking into your shoulder joint. So we often talk about the shoulder joint as a little bit like the golf tee and the golf ball. So you've got quite a small tee, and then you've got the big golf ball, and that's where it gets its mobility for, and that's why it's so unstable. It's actually got this big fibrous, almost like a suction cup that goes over the top, and that suction cup helps some of the stability as well. Now your rotator cuff comes across all of that, and that's sort of what helps tension and tighten the muscles around there. Others of you will have probably, or Georgina, you had the bursa is a common thing that gets commented on in ultrasound findings. So bursa are a fluid-filled sac that helps glide, where tendons and muscles are moving over each other. It sort of lubricates that. If they can get irritated, it's not an uncommon finding at all to have a bunching or a bulking bursa. And it's in response to something else going on in terms of irritation and wear and tear. So that was a little bit of a overview of some of those names. Are there any questions or anything on any of those before I move on?
No, there's a few questions, but not specifically
specific to that stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. I'll keep moving on then. So how do we keep our shoulders healthy? We sort of spoke a little bit about this before in terms of good fitness levels definitely help from an energy and a not having fatigue. And your general health and weight management are also going to make a big difference. The more you're having to lift with your arms, obviously the bigger load there is on it. One of the problems when you're sitting we're doing a lot of sitting generally is we all tend to end up here, looking at our phones and other things, and needing to actually change our position and move back in the other direction. So that's certainly something always very useful that you can do in terms of that your neck is coming back onto the top of your head, on top of your neck, and not poking forwards, and being able to take your shoulders backwards, and giving your spine a bit of a different position. You do need to obviously be careful that you don't tip yourself out the back of the chair if you are sitting in a wheelchair when you're doing some of these things. Exercise is very helpful for keeping your shoulders healthy, as has been alluded to already. Being able to keep your shoulders flexible is really important, particularly being able to have the good old pecs in terms of having them with good range. The other one tends to be lots of people get very, very tight around the top of their shoulders, and that can actually prevent your shoulder blades rotating around your chest wall, and that's quite a common problem, and I think probably related a lot to the pushing and the holding yourself up with your shoulders and those type of things, and your lifting and all those things. Strength is very important as well, and also having a balanced program. So whether you're a wheelchair user or you're walking with gait aids and things like that, you tend to end up using your shoulders in a particular direction all the time with lifting and holding yourself up. So you tend to get quite strong in some muscles, and then consequently quite weak in other ones. So it's really important when we're looking at an exercise program that we try to even that up, so that you're working the muscles that you're not using a lot during your everyday activities. Optimizing your environment in terms of making sure that things are at a good height that you're able to do. And also in terms of looking for shoulder-friendly activities. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment if we get a time. We are starting to run out of time. With exercise considerations, you always need to consider what your goal is that you're trying to work towards. It's really important to have individual assessment about what your particular, what the things that are going on in your shoulders and arms, and also very important to get feedback on how you're moving. What's the movement pattern that you're doing. You might be able to get your arm up, but how are you doing it, and is that a pattern of movement that is working towards having pain-free shoulder movement? Some things that I want you to sort of have a think about when you're doing exercise and being guided in to doing exercise is the other parts of the body that can have an impact on your ability to do exercise and shoulders. If you sit in quite a slouched position, now, if anybody has balance issues, please just be careful with this. And you try to lift your arm up. If you're in a slouched position and lift your arm up, you can't get it up very far. Whereas if your trunk is sitting up taller, that makes a big difference to what's happening there. So your posture can have quite a big impact on what you can do with your arms, and also whether or not movements hurt or not. So your head and neck position are very important while you're doing exercise. If you're doing an exercise with your arm, you don't want your head to end up poking forwards as you're doing that. So being aware of what's going on with your head and neck doing that. Probably the biggest message you'll ever get me is shoulder blades, shoulder blades, shoulder blades. What is going on at your shoulder blade? Is your shoulder blade actually able to maintain a good position and control while you're doing other movements? You saw before that those rotator cuff muscles were all attached to your shoulder blade and your shoulder, so they're not actually stuck down anywhere. There's not one end that's stable while the other one's moving, like it is in a lot of our other muscles. So it's really important that our shoulder blade is stable while we're doing the other movements, because otherwise you end up squishing that space in underneath your shoulder. Also, what's happening with your trunk and how stable you are when you're doing exercises is something to really consider. If you're having to pull down and hold yourself to be stable and then trying to lift your arm up at the same time, that's going to create problems as well. Sometimes you might need to use external straps and things like that, or different positions to make sure that you're stable while you're doing the exercise. Otherwise, what you're trying to do might be counterproductive on that front. Things like your wheelchair setup can make a big difference to your shoulders and your shoulder pain or your ability to move. One thing I generally look for, and it's not possible for everybody, so is can you sit and lift your arms without having to hold yourself up with your arms? Can you balance and just lift your arms and be able to stay there, or are you having to hold yourself up with your arms all day long? Is an important consideration. How we're pushing the wheelchair can make a big difference. Your technique. Do you let go of your rims? Do your hands go down below? Are you turning your shoulders in all the time? Obviously, if you're going uphill, that's has to happen. but on the flat, I think there's lots of things that we can do to make sure that we're taking good care of our shoulders. And the same goes with transfers as well. As soon as you've got your arm out to the side, you don't actually have as much, you can't use your lats if you've got lat muscles to use. You can't actually use them for lifting when your arm's a long way out the side. So things like not regularly doing transfers that are a big distance, or having to put your arm out to the side a long way. If you're doing them every now and again, that's not so much of a problem. It's more the stuff that you're doing on a regular basis. Now, for some of us, we have to sit with a bit of roundedness in our shoulders just to be able to move and function. So there's often a bit of a play-off between, or I can have better posture, but not I can't actually do anything there, so that doesn't help. Naz, you were wanting to say something there, were you?
No, there's a few questions, but not at the moment.
Yeah, cool. if you are moving from a wheelchair base, you will all know that a lot of the work heights, benches and everything, the amount that you have to reach overhead is more percentage of your day than it would be if you were standing. So how much you're reaching overhead and how you're set up and how close you can get to things are really, really important considerations as well. I'll talk just very briefly about what are movements that make shoulders happy versus don't make happy. So as a general rule, lifting, pulling, etc., over 90 degrees tends to be a little bit more risky, okay? And something that you're not necessarily wanting to do a high volume of. So, you know, lifting from overhead and those type of things, you're more likely to injure yourself. You're not as strong, basically, up there as you are at 90 degrees and below. And because of how much we rely on the timing and the good movement for when your arm gets up above, that sort of contributes to that as well. Having your arms turned in, particularly shoulder height and above, tends to close down all those spaces that we were talking about before. So I think probably one of the biggest challenges here is certainly in the kitchen benches, in sinks and things like that. Just watching that we're not turning, you know, doing repetitive movements, turning in. Georgina alluded to her reaching back into the car seat. So she is giving us a very, very good example of what we call a long lever. Now, that probably is something that might jog a memory from way, way, way back in school, talking about levers. If I'm trying to lift something up right at the end of my hand on a really, really long arm, that makes my shoulder work really, really hard, okay? If I'm doing something with a bent arm, with my arm in close to me, my shoulder doesn't have to work anywhere near as hard. So that's just something to think about when you're doing things, particularly getting chairs in and out of the car, reaching for the milk bottle in the fridge, although, you know, those type of things. Think about moving something, sliding something closer to you before you lift it so that you're doing that in nice and close to your body. Hand controls tend to also be a bit of a classic for that one as well, in terms of that's quite a common aggravator for some people who have got shoulder pain in terms of that. Just moving on, in terms of other things to keep your shoulders healthy is managing what we call load, or how much you're asking of them. So our shoulders and our tendons don't like change. They like to do the same thing day in, day out. So often somebody will come to me, I don't know what I didn't do anything different, but I've now got shoulder pain. And often what it is that they may be doing similar things, but they may not have done them recently. They might have been unwell. They might have been away on holiday and they've gone back to doing things. If they haven't done it recently, I'd like to say, if you haven't done it in the last 4 weeks, it's like you haven't done it. Okay, it's how much of that movement or that type of thing that you've done recently that matters. So when we're doing activities and that, so if you're going to be doing something new, if you're going to take up dancing or something like that, you do not want to go from having done none to doing, a whole hour of something that you haven't done recently, because you will probably get sore. Okay, so if you're going to be doing a new activity, you might need to prepare or do things in smaller amounts to work towards that. I like to call finding the Goldilocks amount of activity, because you're obviously needing to use your arms to exercise and strengthen up and do things. So we don't want, if you do no exercise or activity, that's not necessarily a good thing. if you overdo it, you're going to run into strife as well. So we want to find that Goldilocks amount that is enough to keep you strong and healthy and pain-free, but not underdoing it or overdoing it as well. And in terms of your shoulders is when you get pain, to do something about it, not necessarily just ignore it and push on, so that you do seek help on that. So what to do if you have shoulder pain? Depends on the type of pain, whether we spoke about before, whether it's something that that has come on gradually or overnight, versus that you might have had a fall or something like that, that you've had an incident that you can go, yes, I did this and I've got this pain, versus something that has built up. So it depends on sort of the history of that. Really, really common to have a rotator cuff related pain. That is just because you've done something differently in recent times. And sometimes that's not obvious. Sometimes you have to actually go back and go, oh yeah, I was wheeling along and it was, there was quite a slope on the path, and I did a lot of that, even though, I wheel my wheelchair, recently I haven't done that particular activity, having to use that arm all the time on that thing, or it might have been wet or something like that, that you've, it was harder you were gripping on harder on your wheels or something like that. Probably the one big thing I do say, if you have got night pain, that's usually an indication of inflammation, and you definitely need to be doing something about how much load that you are putting on your shoulders to be able to help with that. Okay. And definitely need to be seeking some help if you're uncomfortable at night with your shoulders, and that's keeping you awake. So one of the biggest things when you have shoulder pain that you need to do is listen to it and make sure that you're decreasing what you're asking of your shoulders. Many of us will be familiar with a pressure injury. If you have a pressure injury, you get off of it. Okay, you take the pressure off. It's very, very similar with shoulder pain. You need to give it a chance to heal. Okay, you need it to give it a chance to recover. So you need to take the load or the demand that you're asking of it off of it. Okay, now sometimes that might be that you need to decrease it by 50% of what you're doing. Okay, and if that doesn't work, you might need to take it back further as well. Seek help from health professionals, and also consider the whole person 24-hour assessment. So what I mean by that is all the activities you're doing. It might be how you're doing managing your bladder and having to get on and off the toilet multiple times. It might be the what's happening in positioning in bed. It might be what you're doing on the whole picture of things that can make a big difference to be able to manage your pain. So I alluded to this load before, and what I'm meaning by that is what effort, what are you asking of your shoulders, and how much are you asking of them. So that's things like transfers, it's things like reaching overhead, it's like lying to sitting in a bed, having to push yourself up. It might be how you're using what you're asking of your shoulders when you're using walking aids, and things like that. So one of the biggest things that you can do when you've got an episode of shoulder pain is try to decrease the load, as I spoke before. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. Yes, often you are quite limited in what you can do, but there are options, definitely. And activity is certainly one of them, in terms of what can you decrease the number of transfers that you're doing? Can you decrease the amount of gap or the height of the transfers that you're doing? How do you how do you ask less of your shoulders during that? If you've got any leg movement, it might be making sure that you're using your legs to help with the transfers rather than just relying on your shoulders. You know, it might be how you're doing your transfers. You might be looking at using a slide board when you didn't usually use a slide board. Sometimes getting the slide board in can be problematic, and particularly if you haven't used a slide board in a really long time, you may need to remember to learn how to do that again. But, you know, that's also a way, particularly getting in and out of the car, is, you know, where you've got a big gap. That is something that you can do to make that easier and less load on your shoulders. It might be thinking about how far you're pushing and what terrain. You might, you know, make sure you just only push on the flat, or that you're not pushing as far. Same with walking with gait aids that you're wanting to consider. In terms of equipment, this is something to always consider. I know a lot of people are hesitant to get equipment because they don't want to use it all the time. They're not ready for that, but it is actually a tool that you can use every now and again as well. Like when you have shoulder pain, that you use equipment like a hoist or a sliding board or a commode or things like that, that you don't have to use all the time, but you use them as a tool to be able to take the load or the pressure off your shoulders, so they've got a chance to repair, because it will happen a lot quicker if you can take that load off. Environment is something that you can also look at changing in terms of being able to decrease that as well, particularly in the kitchen, what I was talking about before, in terms of getting everything in close to you, not lifting things up with a long arm, and minimizing doing things overhead as well will also decrease the load on your shoulders. And the other thing is, if you've got shoulder pain or experiencing an episode of shoulder pain, you might need to get some help with more assistance with activities like cooking and cleaning and shopping and things like that. You know, and it might only be for a short period of time that you're needing to do that. It's not necessarily you have to do that forever, but that it's a thing to help take the pressure off, so to speak, so that your shoulders can recover. Okay. I might skip on this for a moment if there's questions. I'm just aware of time, sorry. Are there questions? Sorry, I can't see at the moment in my screen.
Questions?
Yeah.
There's a couple of them I just mentioned. We discussed some of it already in your presentation. Are there any exercises we should avoid? So we talked about movements we should avoid, as in lifting further away from your body.
It's when I say it's when your shoulders are sore, definitely that's the type of thing. It's not that you can't do those activities and you can't train towards doing those. It's all about whether you've done it recently as well, in terms of what you're working towards there. My biggest proviso, it's not necessarily. It comes back more to that thing of what I was talking about before, in terms of what are your shoulder blades doing, and do you have the balance and the stability to be able to do that exercise well. I will give an example. If you don't want to probably be doing challenging things to your balance at a movement that's right at your end of range, probably one of the ones that can be quite problematic if you haven't got a good trunk or good stability, is trying to do triceps right up here. Okay, and that's mainly because I'm right at the end of my movement range, and then I'm putting a weight on that when I may not be able to support it in other areas. It's the same with doing band exercises. Band exercises can be excellent and that, but you've got to make sure that your shoulder blades are in a good position, because if I'm lifting something heavy here and my shoulder blades just going off the back, then I'm probably not helping myself. I'm not getting the value out of my effort for doing that exercise. Okay. If I am trying to do a rowing exercise and I can't actually balance while I'm pulling my arms back, then you're probably not getting your best bang for buck out of that exercise. Does that help or answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. Another one was, how much exercise is too much in a week, which will eventually hurt your shoulder in the future? So does doing gym more than 3 days, would that cause trouble for the future?
Not necessarily. As what I said before, it depends what you've been doing previously. Okay. It's all about gradual change. If you're going to start out doing something, starting small, gradually increasing it. Okay. Like gym, like, I mean, the guideline, the activity and exercise guidelines, and even for general population, they're 3 times a week in terms of strength and resistance training and those type of things. So, 3 times a week is too much if you've done nothing. But if you've been working up to that and gradually increasing, it's, definitely. And it all depends. Like, to me, it's also about how you're doing the exercise is really important, and getting that feedback about whether or not your technique's good, because I can't tell where my shoulder blades are, and I don't have a spinal cord injury. Those type of things, are challenging for any of us in that regard. So knowing whether you're doing an exercise with good technique, I think, is probably really, really valuable.
5 days, for example, going to the gym, is that depends on the load you put on yourself as well?
Yeah, it really depends, as I said, what you've been doing before. What you're doing, are you doing it with good technique and that type of thing? They're the thing. It's probably the bad technique that will run you into more problems, and the significantly increasing what you're doing in a hurry that will get you into strife.
Excellent. Another couple of questions. Your presentation, is that going to be, or can it be made available PDF or not?
I'd say so. Yeah. There's nothing particularly. Yeah, that's
there's
fine.
like people want
Yeah, I can convert that to PDF. That's not a problem.
Okay. And this is going to be recorded, and for people that have registered, you'll get the link to the recording so you can watch it again and see the slideshow as an option. Another question, does Janet approve of ski ergs for exercise?
I don't know that it needs Janet's approval, does it?
Well, it sounds like it, they want your tick.
It's all about technique as well. It's the same. Everything probably comes back to those same principles in terms of how you're doing it, how much volume of you doing it, and how much you've changed that. Okay. I would probably, with your skier, I don't know how possible it is with the, sometimes they take your arms up quite high when from a wheelchair base. So that would be just something I'd be a little bit careful of. Maybe don't let them go quite so high up. And you're just going to need to watch what's happening and whether you've got the balance to be able to do it that way. I think balance is usually one of the really, really big things, because you will end up doing this or pulling in to try to stabilize yourself. So yeah.
Excellent. Janet, was your slideshow finished?
I've got a couple of other ones if there's time.
While you're doing that, there's I'll just read, like, there was.
I think this has gone to sleep on me.
There's one final comment.
That was from Ellie Nas. That's Ellie, not mine. It's got my name on it, but it's from Ellie.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so this is Ellie saying, I just wanted to offer people another service that can help, that complements osteopathy, physio, and exercise physiologists are another fabulous option to help build the shoulder muscles in exercise specific movements. This can help build strength pre-surgery, possibly to build strength to avoid surgery as well, and also just general shoulder maintenance.
So Ellie's emphasizing that exercise physios are a
Oh,
really
yeah.
great option.
Yes, exercise physiologists also. Yeah, very much so. One thing I just was wanting to bring up is in terms of imaging. Imaging tells you where there are deficits. It doesn't tell you whether that's the thing causing your pain or problem. At the time, it's a really, really common thing that you'll see and hear in terms of if you were to x-ray or scan my back at the moment, you'll find something astray. If you were to ultrasound my shoulder, you might find that I have tears and that they're not painful. Okay, so when you have imaging done, it is really important to realise that it's one piece of information, and it should be accompanied by somebody getting a history and actually seeing whether that actually matches up with what's actually currently going on for you. Just because it's on a scan doesn't necessarily mean that that's the thing that is causing the issue for you at the moment. I think it can be like Georgina expressed, how scary or worrying it can be when you're seeing all these words and all this information that there's things wrong in your shoulder. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not things that can be overcome, and it does not necessarily mean that that they are causing the problem at this moment in time. With corticosteroid injections, I would just please get some advice first and look at other aspects. The corticosteroid injections can be very helpful and very necessary in some circumstances. You just need to be careful how many you have of those. They shouldn't be the first line of like the only thing that you're doing. It needs to be accompanied by other things, because the chance of it working, if you haven't changed anything about what you're doing, is unlikely to be as helpful as it could be as well. And look, I think we've touched a little bit on shoulder surgery already from people's lived experience. It is a big undertaking in that if you have a rotator cuff repair, you use your arms to transfer, you will not be able to transfer, and you will need to use a hoist, power chair, all of those side of things for 3 to 6 months afterwards. So it's a big, it's a big undertaking in that regard. Sometimes actually doing that aspect of things, actually getting serious about taking the load off, using equipment, can also help settle your shoulder pain down as well. So it's just something to consider there as well. Just in terms of resources for help, if you are a Victorian Spinal Cord Service client, there's the Spinal Outreach Service that have got nurses, OTs, physios, and social work. There's my service, there's the local neurological or private physiotherapist, a musculoskeletal or sports physiotherapist. They might, with musculoskeletal or sports physiotherapists, you can always use one of those, and in conjunction with us in terms of helping from the spinal cord injury aspects that we can sort of help out with as well. And as alluded to before, I'm very amiss in not having exercise physiologists on here as well, and obviously other, Georgina's using a osteopath as well. They're all other options as well. So that's probably it from me from a slideshow point of view.
Excellent, Janet. So that was fantastic. Thanks very much for that. There's no other questions at the moment. We'll go for a few more minutes. I know you talked about wheelchair fitting as well. That's very important, Janet, because if your posture's not right, everything's going to be out of whack. You know, your balance is going to be out of whack and pushing and all that sort of stuff. Marty said, or you got a bit more to add to that, Marty, about wheelchair fitting, and you went overseas and got that.
Yeah, so I'll go into detail. One of the biggest things that we found that was causing a lot of my shoulder issues was my chair setup, my sports chair setup, because I was spending so much time in it and doing a lot of Ks in them. And then we were worked out that just through videos and all that kind of stuff, that it was just not efficient. It was causing more damage. So I actually got referred to a company in the UK. So in March, I went across to the UK to get, it's a 3D body mapping fitting. So it's the only place in the world that does it now. So what they actually do is they sit you in a machine. I didn't have some photos set up. And I was in it for about 3 hours. So we were doing video analysis of my body. It was scanning my body, and then we're changing the positions of the wheels, the position of the feet, all that kind of stuff. And we were doing micro adjustments, so millimeters. And then the computer, we thought we had it all right. Then the computer picked up that my shoulders were lifting by 0.5 of a mil. So then we went back and then changed that again. And my chair got made while I was there. I had two other fittings, and then of the actual basically finished chair. And we found out that it's changed so much, it's actually quite incredible. So I had a quick push before my last surgery last week, and it's just mind-blowing. I just can't emphasize enough that this thing's going to save me just so much wear and tear on my shoulders. But also, it's just so different. Like, so my feet, to give you an example, my feet used to be tucked under me, like a lot of rugby chairs and all that kind of stuff. But in badminton, it's actually better for my feet to come out the front. So we've actually pushed the thing right out front, which has actually then opened up my hips. And then we put more what we call dump in the chair, so more tilt in the chair, which then helps me to lengthen my cores, not flash. So then helps me to lean back far further and a lot more efficient. But then also my hands actually, because of the way where we've put the wheels now, we've actually changed the actual pitch of the actual camber of the tires. So I used to be at 23, which was quite like that. Now I've come up to 18. And the reason and how we achieve that is by putting the back casters out the back further out, and they're sprayed out. So the reason why we have cambered tires, sorry if it's getting too technical, but cambered tires like this in sports chairs is for turning and stuff, especially people with low core, like not much core and that, like I've got and Naz got and stuff like that. So by enabling camber, it actually makes me quicker and more efficient. So, but with the casters out the back, it will stop me from tilting over and stuff like that, which is the main reason why they put so much camber on the wheels in the first place. But also in saying that, my wheels have come forward a fraction. They used to be too far behind me under my bum, which is now giving me more chance. I can actually grab the wheel. It's different on wheelchair chairs because you don't usually have rims and all that kind of stuff. But I actually grab, because my hands aren't flash, I actually grab my tires by these two fingers. And it allows me now that I can grab my wheel right around rather than it basically at 12 o'clock on a clock where I could just push through because I didn't have the core to go lean back and push through. Now I can grab my wheels all the way back around at about 9 o'clock and then push through, which means I get a more efficient and less pushing I need to do and a lot higher rate. So I'm actually a lot faster. So there is things that are coming out now. This company's been only around for, I think, 5 or 6 years doing this technology. But yeah, just make sure you get scripted right because that can do you a hell of a lot of damage. Because there's a lot of people I've seen scripted for chairs and things like that. I'm not going to mention any companies that just use tape measures and stuff like that. You need to make sure you've got proper OTs who know how to chair fit properly. You need to make sure that, you know, you test these things out and you get fitted correctly because they can absolutely change your whole world that you live in. and the damage it can cause is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
just
No,
go right
that's great. Thank you very much, Marty. So that's just, is there a saying, work smarter, not harder? So if your wheelchair is set up the right way, you're not fighting it.
Yep.
And it's part of your body, and you're getting around with the most efficient way you can. Yeah, so that's fantastic. Right, so I think we're pretty much covered quite a lot. There's no other questions. Maybe we'll just finish off. And anyone out there, if you've got any questions and you weren't able to ask it today, please give AQA a call and we'll try to answer them. If you want to get in touch with one of the panel members, same thing, email us or give us a call and we'll put you in touch and answer any of your questions. Jack, any advice before we finish?
I just look after yourselves out there, and I just going with Janet. I think using your exercise physiologist or physio to make sure you're doing your exercises and strengthening exercises right and with the right amount of load. I think that's most important.
Yeah. Fantastic. Georgina, any final comments or tips for anyone?
Yes, I forgot to add also, along with looking at your equipment to help you, is if you have a power assist like a smart drive or a Baytech to assist you, stop you from pushing around too much, that'll help a lot. Myself, with regards to work, I was catching a taxi instead of driving. So just little things like that. And also, Janet mentioned getting help, like around the house. Getting a carer an extra hour or the cleaner to help clean a little bit more, do the things that you were normally doing, just to get the load off your shoulder for a little bit, let it rest. So that's what I would add.
Yeah.
Thank you, Naz.
No, excellent. And Marty?
No, just make sure you get your stuff scripted right. Also, please use your professionals like Janet. I work very closely with them day in, day out, really.
Yeah.
And that gives you more longevity. And yeah, don't be scared to do exercise because I think it really helps you in not only recovery, but everyday life as well.
Yeah, great. And Janet?
Sorry, I'd muted myself. Hopefully I just think, make sure you get help and don't suffer in silence, definitely. And I would echo exercise is very, very important. It's makes a difference. It really does.
Excellent. I might finish off. We've talked about equipment quite a bit. I mean, the last year I've got like a electric bed. First time ever. And no one likes using extra equipment, but you need it to make life easier, pretty much. So it's easier on my shoulders. Started using that for a year now, and I love it. And also a slide board. I'm using a slide board a lot more often, especially getting in and out of the car. And that's been a new addition for me as well, and yeah, it just makes me think, I should have probably started using one quite a while ago. So that's it. So Jack, Georgina, Janet, Marty, really appreciate your time for today. Great work. Thank you very much. And finally, I'll let people know that we're going to put this on our YouTube channel again if you want to watch it. And any questions, let us know. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.